a better system
Well, look,
than your own people group,
look at
in
China
this
and what
case
they're doing with their
Americans,
population.
being able to reproduce their own population. You're never going to be able to subsidize that with anything superior, ever.
I know over there in Ireland it's getting pretty roughed up with the immigration situation, isn't it, James?
That's true.
I used to live in
That's
England,
true.
and I noticed that back in 2007, I used to travel all over the UK. I lived there for 3 years, and I noticed how the English in the beginning were pretty nice to me, and towards the end of my time in England, they started being a little bit more having more animosity towards me, thinking I was something I'm not. And then I realized a few years later, I was like, oh shit, man, they're going, it's because of all this shit going on. And that's when Tommy Robinson, came out with all the rape shit scandals that, the Brits are covering up over those ragheads, right? And
Yeah,
it's a
it's a
fucking
disease.
disease, man.
It's a
And I'm like,
disease.
fuck, man. I'm like, Jesus Christ. No wonder these fucking Brits don't like me. They think I'm a fucking Arab.
Well,
That's
I think
fucked up.
it's a really bad prescription
Everyone
because
in
I
here,
think that when you
you
go
want to
ahead
see
and try to replace your population with outside foreigners and everything like that, you're also replacing your religious ideals, you're replacing your belief system,
Exactly.
you're
Yeah, that's
replacing
what I was
social stigmas and
if you
norms
want to
and
see
things like that.
England convert to
Yeah.
Islam,
So this is the
That's
thing,
what I
though.
was
It's
heading.
like
That's what I was heading for.
you're gonna get semblances of everything else, like Mexico. You're gonna get some semblances of Catholicism, everything else like that. But that's the problem that people overlook is that when you go ahead and try to offer a adjunct replacement to what we have, which is the birth rate, right? So if you start doing this, now you're inviting moral belief systems that are opposed to ours, things like that. You're inviting really nefarious ideology into our already bad systems that we have right now as far as social shifts. So you're integrating a social shift that's now, I would say, an artificial. I mean, I wouldn't call it an artificial, but this is what it's akin to, is an artificial push to changing your whole ideology. You're talking about maybe letting in more Muslim states, like you were saying earlier, things like that. And I think that's really bad. If we don't correct this,
Well, how about,
that's what
yeah,
we're headed to.
you're talking about Dawkins' lament here,
Right.
So
Yes.
famously, as Richard Dawkins sits down, one of the most prominent anti-theists who's ever lived, perhaps the most prominent anti-theist of my lifetime, sits down during an interview and laments, I miss the Christmas carols. Okay. I miss the culture of Christianity, which had enriched my life, that I fought tooth and nail against. Right. And I rather miss that. I rather think that that was quite good. I rather think so. What his lament is simple, right? Even the secularists inside of the Christian culture, right, benefited greatly, benefited
yep.
greatly from the Christian culture, hugely. Now, they didn't have to believe it, and we can't force people into the belief of Christianity. That would be antithetical to Christian ethics itself, right?
Right.
But to say that their lives weren't completely enriched by it is insane, as Dawkins laments and says, of course it was. The holidays were here. We enjoyed ourselves during these holidays, this and that. Well, what he's saying is that these atheists, right, in a way, they're cultural Christians, right? They still adopt that culture and still prefer that culture over other cultures, even though they're atheists here. There's a big distinction between trying to say, I want to leave behind the idea that Christians are in charge of everything. We have to follow their barbaric, old-fashioned moral codes, right? While at the same time living within the benefits of that culture and simply replacing the culture altogether with another one, because you cannot even reproduce, right?
Right.
So in many ways,
worse.
the American atheist is less of a problem ultimately to the kind of Christian supremacy power than many of these other foreign bodies who come in, who will replace the entire authority altogether, just gone.
Right.
Andrew, well, you bring that up. The reason why I brought up Ireland and the UK is because right now we are literally witnessing live in action the decay and the rot that is actually poisoning England. They are literally, giving people, jail sentences for shit over social media. There's more Arabs and anti-white people, anti-white laws going on right now in England. Like you see it galore, man. And they are trying to. That's a perfect example of what that leftist idea is trying to do upon America. That's why they brought in all these, immigrants, trying to do something similar, more or less. Unbeknownst to them, it didn't work out so well. Look at that. We have the Great White Hope back in office. But
It started with a simple social experiment of enfranchisement for all, right?
Yeah.
The idea that self-governance and egalitarian principles are the overriding principles in which we should adhere and the virtues for which we should strive for. And the rejection of the idea that social coherence and a stable society is a necessary precondition for egalitarianism to begin with, right? But the second you uproot the social order of power dynamics, in this case, kings or princes or men of noble birth or anything like this, and you replace it with a new strive virtue for all equal, everyone's equal, everybody's, pictured in an egalitarian framework, everybody is set that way. You have now uprooted the force order of the day. And so there's going to be consequences, blowback for that. Okay, most people would say, well, I would accept the consequences for this idea of egalitarianism. The first consequence being, okay, as long as you're not infringing on my rights, I'm not allowed to infringe upon your rights, right? The problem is that this ignores a massive, what I call the ripple effect, which is that if you have the right to create porn, right, but somebody becomes addicted to it, are you then infringing on their rights? The argument would be no. They can choose to consume it or not. But what if you make something so pervasive and parasitic that it's unavoidable? It's literally unavoidable, right? You can't not find it somewhere where it pops up to try to draw you in, right? I'd say at that point, right, you're moving past what the ideas of egalitarianism even were. In this case, with the uprooted social order, right, feminism, women's liberation, right, opens the door for the rest of these very impractical compensations, which are designed to compensate for women's liberation and women's sexual liberation, especially. This leads to lessened birth rate. You compensate for that now with mass migration, right? But then you have to create and reinforce more totalitarian laws in society in order to keep the immigrants that you're bringing in under control, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a massive snowball effect. So if you have, it's like if one organ in your body shuts down, they all shut down, right? And that's the case when you're talking about the body of the social order of a nation, which is its people, its cultures, and its language. Take one of those things away, and the other two no longer exist. You can't have a nation with no borders. It doesn't matter if you have culture and language. And you can't have a nation with no language, regardless of borders and culture, etc. Right? So the thing is, the second
nationalism,
the second you shut one organ down, they all shut down. And that's what you're seeing the effects of, right? And an organ was shut down, where women had enough of a moral high ground to pass the 18th Amendment before there was a 19th Amendment, which gave them the right to vote. How were they able to legislatively still pass an amendment, even though they were considered disenfranchised? Because they still had political power. It just wasn't structured in a way where they were used as cogs. It was almost a better checks and balance system for women and men. But you attack one organ, that organ shuts down, and the entire body follows. And that's what's happening.
Well, the Jewish plan to make the European blood unpure. So there's basically just like divide and conquer.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with pure European blood, but it has to do with the fact. Because, I mean, look, what is pure? Look, when you're talking about European blood, especially, okay, there's so many fucking mutts in Europe, dude, who are like Irish and English and French and all kinds of fucking shit, including here in the United States. We're all a bunch of fucking mutts. I'm Irish and English. My guess is that most of the people inside of this space are all sorts of impure by whatever kind of demographic standard you would have.
That's the trick. That's the trick.
So
I mean,
Dude, white. No, it's not. It's not a trick. Whites have never been a monolith, bro. Ever.
The previous generations and the grandparents and then the grandfather, they all go, and it's all just
They
propagated
were all
lies
mixed too,
because
though.
the truth. Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's just this happened for
Yeah.
thousands of years.
I mean,
and they just
I get told I look very Swedish, by my my height, my physique.
could be.
I mean, shit, man, I just can't help it, But
Americans are
I'm mostly
compared
Irish.
to Europeans.
I'm just kidding, man. I'm just a black
My
Tino.
only my
Hello,
only
everyone.
thing is what's gonna happen. Like what's gonna be essentially the the end of everything that's happening, because my fear personally is that there's only really one thing that can happen, which is um something terrible, meaning, or someone terrible
Communism.
coming into power. And then, because when people feel taken advantage of, so what they do is they fight back. Eventually they kick, scream, holler, and then they fight back, which gives lends to power. Kind of like Andrew's saying, when an organ breaks down, well, then the whole body's going to shut down. But before the entirety of the body dies or shuts down, it's going to put up a fight to try to overcompensate. And unlike a human body, there really is there's no end of that person. It's not a real living being, right?
Yeah,
Well,
What
no,
is going to come
no,
of
no.
this?
Hang on. It is a real living being. The social society is a conglomeration of human beings, and
Fair.
the policies and effects and legislative bodies which come into being from the conception of how to rule and keep society whole and good, right? And it's what do you want society to gravitate towards, which is going to create social stability, right? And create something which can become kind of ever expansive and give you the joys of all of the beauty and all of the, kind of great human achievements that we know people can do if we have cohesion, right? Real cohesion.
Mm.
That's been essentially destroyed. Social cohesion is completely mangled. In fact, I would say millennials and Zoomers are the most sexually confused people who've ever lived on planet Earth. I would say there's never been a generation of people in the history of all of mankind who are as socially, sexually confused as Zoomers and millennials. I've
I'd
never
agree.
seen
Yeah.
so many people who are so like fucking sexually dysfunctional and so dysfunctional when it comes to just regular, normal human interactions. It's pathetic. I mean, it's fucking pathetic. They don't even know how to interact with each other.
Well, I think a lot of this,
Human
I think a lot of this
social
has to do with
interactions
just
are
your dad being
intuitive,
taken out.
right?
Yeah.
That's an advantage.
Well, the thing is that I think that a lot of this
One that
was
has a
done
brain.
because of the dad being taken out of the home, and this was systemic, I think, in part to a lot of structures. I remember growing up, I'll give you like a little anecdote. My dad couldn't come back home because if they did, they would cut off my mom's food stamps. So you'd have to think like how many other systems in place happened to where it's like, you had a black mom that was like, well, no, I'm being taken care of here. At least this is consistent. And I got these checks and things like that. So, I mean, you're getting two fathers removed from the house. You're getting God removed, and then you're getting your dad taken out in a sense because your
Yeah.
mom's choosing the welfare state over the dad too. So, I mean, there's plenty of this happening in society. So where now it's like we've come to this era to where it's like, how many single moms do we have raising kids now? And it's like, you don't have that structure. Moms are more fluid and as far as emotions and, not consistent. And, it's everything's conditional with women when it comes to things like that. And when you base things off of emotion,
The system runs
yeah,
on
you're not going to have that stability,
people's need. The system runs on people's need to need them. So if you don't need the system, then you're all right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing though, is like it's reversed to where it's like if you need the system, you're fine. You're perfectly fine. And that was
Yeah, you're
perfectly
fucked.
acceptable. It's
No,
like,
but you could be fucked at the same time.
yeah, I could see that. But that's the thing though, is I think that a lot of propaganda and acceptance was given away to like, I'm not going to say just minority, because a lot of white people were on food stamps too. So it was like, it's rampant. You're almost replacing fathers with another thing. The state's raising your family instead. So
Yeah, the leftists basically got rid of hard work, right? I mean, they want us to rely on them, the government. That's the whole, shtick. So they can control you. They can control the narrative. So they can keep bringing up more degeneracy, more of this diabolical stuff going on that we actually are, experiencing right now and within our very own eyes. So, that's a damn shame. We need to bring back, that, working hard, does pay off in the long end. Women being feminine again, not being whores. And, these little things, right? That actually became a big thing of what we're fighting for now, right? So
You never see young men buying land anymore. It's always they want to invest in something that makes them look cool for social media. You never see young men actually working hard. Like, what percentage of men in America
dude,
have
exactly,
trades?
yeah.
Like, you see
I
a plumber,
agree.
electrician.
Yeah, do you
know what
remember?
I'm saying?
I don't know how old you are, but I'm almost 40 years old. And so, but I remember back in the day when
I'm 18 years old.
Yeah, bro. Like back in the day, no one ever wanted to be nothing in regards to any media of any sort. You know what we wanted to be? Fighters. We wanted to be cops. We wanted to be astronauts, tornado chasers. Anything. Norm. Now you ask these kids, about 10, even teenagers, they all want to be a fucking podcaster. It's like, dude, whatever happened to good work?
Roberto, I am going to push back on that a little bit. See, so here's my pushback. Colleges are becoming really more gynocentric than they used to be, right? And they're taking out shop classes, automotive classes. Where have you seen those? We don't hear about those anymore.
Okay.
ICE being reduced.
I agree, but
all these things are being taken out. So, and men are being driven to trades because we're starting to see other things like as far as colleges, people are being weeded out. I mean, gender studies is flooding the market when it comes to colleges and stuff like that in mass. You have liberal arts degrees, and it's like all you have is a degree with a paper trail. That's it. You can work at Starbucks. I literally have seen a barista with a liberal arts degree and then serving me coffee. They're not supposed to be doing that, right? But if they're not hiring liberal arts degree people, it's like they don't have a job. So it's like men aren't going to join that. What men are going to do that? So of course, trades, you have HVAC is paying really good, things like that.
Welding,
really starting to pick up too. Yeah, welding, things like that. So I'm going to push back a little bit. Trades are booming a little bit because colleges are pushing men out.
No.
Hell, they're doing this at high school.
No,
taking out shop classes, everything else.
Like, I agree. I was actually heading towards there, but you didn't let me finish. How dare you?
Well, of course, you were too slow as fuck. So yeah.
No, I agree. Their trade jobs are actually becoming, they're actually been picking up because a lot of these young men are actually realizing, wow, we have a very pussified college, and they're starting to get, sick of, the feminization within their school. They're like, this shit ain't normal, but that's a good thing because, it's gonna, have more, true blue collar workers. That's what we know. That's what we need more than ever, right? But obviously,
listen.
Go ahead. Done.
Oh, listen, guys. Basically, I will never, ever in my life work another job where it's a female manager that's overweight. I'm not even joking. I had this bar job, right? And you know how your bar is supposed to give you like a drink at the end of the night? So I goes to get my drink at the end of the night, and this big wheel of a thing comes over to me and starts telling me, no, you can't drink that. No, and then she fires me on the spot. This woman is absolutely crazy.
James,
you should see the size.
We don't say that kind of stuff. That's kind of mean. We call them high-calorie women. Okay.
Well, it's not even that. I think that if you have a woman in general, and I mean, not to be an absolute sexist here, but it's like, how many of you have worked for a woman that's, off one day and then on the next or something like that? I'm not saying that a woman can't be in a manager position, but it's also been proven that women in leadership positions, I've literally fought feminists on this, when they're in leadership roles of nations, they're 28% more likely to go to war than men. So if you think about this, and I am conflating the two when you come to the job market and things like that, like I do like working for men. It's almost like the firm, fair, and consistency is there, amongst other things. And it's like almost you have a semblance of a father kind of within that. And you do want a patriarchal system, a rule of a man, when it comes to things like this is almost like a semblance of God. You want God the Father and things like this, and you want other things to mirror this, i.e. like the workforce and things like that too, right? So go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
So you do want to go ahead and see semblances of this. things that you do want to see in society. If you come from a home with a single mom, of course, it's going to be fine to see a mom, or a lady boss and things like that. Things like this are becoming more congruent in society and things like this. But that's because acceptance of single moms is infiltrating everything else. So now everybody else, and we're talking about since the 70s when they pushed women into the workforce, things like this. And it's like we can look at this and we can look at how pay's gone down because now they've doubled the workforce and employers can pay us less. So there's also that too. So there's like a disparity that's happening in the workforce right now. What you were talking about, I don't think it's just heavy set women. I think that I do want a man to be my boss. I'm not saying that a woman can't do this.
Yeah.
I just prefer a man to be a boss. It's more relatable. I can confront him. I can be a little bit more aggressive with him without feeling I have to hold my
Yeah.
tone. I don't get tone police that much. Things like this. And I'm saying
Yeah,
very
that's what
obvious shit here too. So it's like if I want to argue for a pay raise, it's perfectly acceptable, but I have to watch my tone around a woman when I want to ask for a raise. I have to do it about in a certain way because it's not what I said, it's about how I said it in her office. And now all of a sudden I'm being fucked for the rest of my career because of one day when I argued for a raise, Go ahead.
I think women are good at management positions, some of them, but they're not good at leadership positions. Because once you get women in leadership positions, listen, leadership and management are two completely different things, right? And then you have some women that get these jobs that are so high class and like a judge. Imagine a woman being a judge, right? So the woman is a judge and she's on her period.
Usually
And
they're on
then
their
you go up.
menopause age by here.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, imagine there was a judge. You go up to the judge one day and it's a female judge and she just so happens to be on her period that day. You could get way more of a sentence than you would normally.
Yeah. Hey,
Well,
Marty, dude.
but
Hey,
that's also
hey, Marty.
frowned upon to talk about too, because we can't talk about women's period. We can't talk about their weight, things like this.
But I,
All you're doing is pointing out objective reality. And that's almost like very insulting, which they could do the same for us. They could talk about our weight, our height, our dick size, everything else, because we're mansplaining, but womansplaining is not a thing for some reason. So this is the problem though, is there's a double standard when it comes to leadership too. And that's something that is quite often not discussed as well too, when we talk about leadership roles, because like I said, you can go ahead and argue with your male manager, but you can't do that with your female manager because of tone, everything else. So yeah, when you talk about judges, by all means, like we could talk about the period, but there you talk about this out loud because you're supposed to be sensitive towards a woman's needs. Whereas far as if, a man had something like going on, whereas he's suffering from low T or something like that. Oh, by all day you could rail this guy all day long because he's suffering from low T, ED, everything else. You could bring that up and he's a man, he could take that. But, there's this perception on leadership in society where, you can't come for the queen, but the king all day long, as long as it's like, you're a guy, he's a guy, you could do this. But dare you put anybody else in the equal position of opportunity to be confronted for a wage increase or to be challenged? Because here's the thing that nobody ever talks about too. Any leadership role is supposed to be challenged. Otherwise, if you can't defend your leadership, you don't deserve that anyways. It's supposed to be challenged by anything else. Look at any king, look at by warring tribes and opposite kingdoms, challenge his role, right? If you're in an employer position, you're going to get shit tested by your own employees. The problem with this is that when you shit test women, you're going to be judged by this double standard approach of, oh, watch, she's on her monthly, or it's Shark Week, things like this. So it's like, it's almost like you're fighting with a handicap. It's by social stigmas and shit.
Hey, Marty. Looks like these.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dude, we've been here for like fucking 2 hours, dude, and I've been working, trying to keep my eye out on those simp ass fucking pussy faggots. I have to get back to my business though, bro.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dude,
Go ahead.
yeah, man.
I actually literally invited them on this space.
I know.
So when Andrew was
I
talking,
blasted them too, dude. I blasted them too. They're not.
yeah, I went ahead and commented during the whole thing. I invited the feminists so I could go ahead and wreck them on this space. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, we could wrap this up. So
yeah, dude, they fucking pussy.